Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing. We're in the greenhouse again today. We're still working outside. We got a few more days probably of outdoor work that we can get done, so we're okay there. Last week we started talking about amaryllis, getting them ready for Christmas. And just as a recap, we potted up one of our Cybistor amaryllis into our nice fritillaria pot. So we gave it a good soak, and you can see we haven't watered it again. So it's dry on the surface, but there is still moisture down here. And we probably won't water it again until we see some shoots coming. Depends how long that takes. The one thing you don't want to do with an amaryllis when you first pot them is overwater them. So you need to keep an eye on that. Then just be careful that you're not waterlogging the soil until new roots have started to grow. So you just need to keep an eye on that. This one, because it's in the greenhouse and it's in lots of sun, you know, the soil's probably dry down to the bottom of the bulb. So I may give that a drink today. That'll be a week after we potted it. In the house, probably not necessary. We're going to look at a different method of displaying your amaryllis. And this is what we love to do at this time of the year, because rather than just an amaryllis in a pot, we like to work them into arrangements or table setters, things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant an amaryllis planter. We're going to use a range of house plants and then add amaryllis into it. So we've got this great little bowl here. It's about a, I don't know, what is it, about a 12-inch diameter, maybe 10-inch diameter. It doesn't have a drainage hole, but it has the spot to put a drainage hole in. Now, we're going to do, this is a short-term planter we're going to do, so I'm not going to punch the drainage hole. I will have to be careful with watering, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. If you were going to make a long-term planter, then I would definitely recommend to knock that drainage plug out and allow drainage to be there. You know, for short-term, most people can get by for a few weeks without overwatering. But remember, anytime you put water in, it's only going to evaporate or be used by the plants. So you need to be careful that you're not waterlogging them. Or conversely, being too afraid and keeping them too dry. Certainly, too dry is always better than too wet. Wet will kill plants very, very quickly. Dry, they get a little wilty. You give them some water, they bounce back. Much more apt to bounce back from dry than wet. So, we're going to design a planter here. We're going to use one of the amaryllis we got last week. This is a beautiful, sort of a double, semi-double one called Amadeus. It's white, it's got a green stroke, it's got a bit of a pink fringe on it. So hopefully the plants we've picked are going to complement that bulb. This is a shorter one, which is always nice for when you do a mixed container. Look for the shorter ones that are going to stick at around maybe 18 inches max. You get into the real big guys, and you know you've got a 3-foot amaryllis coming out of a pot. Doesn't really look right. So our amaryllis has already started to sprout. You can see we've got a few little shoots there. We've got a bud starting right here already. So we're going to use that in our mix. Now, remember I just mentioned about the watering? When mixed planters are put together, especially if you buy them already mixed, usually the plants have nowhere near the same cultural requirements as each other. So you need to be careful, especially when you're putting a big bulb in like this. Now, you can put all your plants in, arrange them, plant the bulb in the center, but especially if you're using no drainage, I would suggest leaving a space for the bulb and then getting your other plants in, doing your bulb separate, and then tucking it in once it started to grow. So I'll show you how to do that. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. One way, which is kind of neat, but I'm not going to use it for this one, would be to take a pot, cut the bottom out, fill this with soil, and you can then plant your amaryllis into that, and then into the mixed planter. So you could do it this way, and then that way the pot is going to hold your amaryllis at the right spot. It's not going to let the bulb sink down in and get too wet in a mix. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a different method. We're just going to take a stack of pots, 4-inch pots. We're going to put them into the center, like this. They're about level with the edge of the pot, a little bit less, sort of ideal. And then what we're going to do is we're going to plant our amaryllis into another one of the same size pots. So we're going to do that. So we'll do that first. Get some soil in there. Push the amaryllis in. You probably don't even need much soil around it, but we'll put a little bit of soil around it. Firm it all in there well. We're going to water that amaryllis in, and then we're going to put it on the windowsill. So what that's going to do for us is going to allow the amaryllis to get rooted and start growing without getting overwatered in the planter. So that's done. That's all we need to do with that. We're going to set it aside. Now we need to look at what we're going to plant with it. So I grabbed a selection of things out of the greenhouse. We grabbed a couple of other seasonal things from the local garden center. And we're going to use a mix. So, as I first said, we're going to put a little tower of pots in the center, because that's where our amaryllis is going to go. Then, we're going to fill in a bit of soil around the outside edge of that little tower of pots. So there we go. We're not filling the pot full just yet, because we've got a lot of plants to put in there. So, now we're at the point where, what do we want to put in here? Kind of whatever we want. We've got a few seasonal favorites. Norfolk Island pine. When these are young little seedlings, they're beautiful in a mixed planter. Certainly give it that evergreen holiday sort of feel. So we'll probably use that. Other plants that we see at this time of the year a lot, the Selaginellas. This is the one called Frosty Fern. We see it so much at this time of the year. This is your regular golden club moss. Frosty Fern is a neat one, because in the winter, in the cooler weather, it gets these little white fringe on it. You won't see that if you keep it growing. But they have that nice woodsy sort of look to them. They look good with other, if you were walking through a forest, you would see Selaginellas and little baby evergreens growing together. It just would be a natural thing. So they also have a beautiful texture. The one thing about the Frosty Ferns and the Selaginellas is that they like moisture and humidity. So in a long-term mix, they're terrible. You would never plant a lot of this stuff together with the Frosty Ferns in a long-term planter. But a short-term planter for, 2 months or so, 3 months, you're probably fine. This will be the first plant that will tell you if you're not watering enough, I guarantee it. Because it'll collapse and dry out like crazy. So you just have to keep an eye on that. But they're in every planter these days, simply because they're so cool. Another one that we see, and there's no poinsettias here yet, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Another one that you see at this time of the year, and really one of my favorite sort of seasonal plants or gift plants for the home are the cyclamen. And if you haven't gone into a nursery where they grow a lot of cyclamen, they're just amazing. Every plant has a different foliage of silver patterning. The flower colors are amazing. We've got so many even different flower forms now as well. Usually we have this reflex upturned flower, but now we've got ones that have a splayed out flower, which give a whole different look to it. There are standard size varieties. This is a miniature, and you can get the miniatures in 2-inch pots, 3-inch pots, 4-inch pots, and then you move up to the bigger standard varieties, which are usually 6-inch pots. Much bigger flowers, same foliage, same flower look, but just much bigger. And there's a wonderful array of them out there. So we got that. We got the poinsettias as well, which could work into here for seasonal, and we'll talk about that. Also at this time of the year, you're going to see plants available like the Gaultheria or wintergreen. And what I said, remember what I said about, things being different conditions for plants at this time of the year? Gaultheria is a native Ontario woodland perennial that grows all through northern Ontario. It is completely hardy. It lives in acidic bog edges and things like that. And if you've got acidic, boggy soil, if you've got a rhododendron bed, something like that, you could use Gaultheria as a hardy ground cover in your garden. Certainly it is not meant to be a long-term houseplant. This is a hardy perennial in Ontario, but at this time of year, you have these gorgeous berries, which make it very showy for this time of the year. So you're seeing it a lot in mixed planters or as a component to mixed planters. The neat thing about it is that Gaultheria is wintergreen. Just like if you bought wintergreen gum, it's wintergreen and you can eat them. So anyway, and they're minty. So for short term, awesome. Long term, no. But mix them in with this, and you've got a Northern Ontario woodland walk, basically, right? Is what I'm saying. So they look good together. The conditions they want for long-term care, completely different. So short-term only. If you want to keep a planter going for longer, then look at your other houseplant families. Some of the ferns, this is an elkhorn fern, very upright, surprisingly drought tolerant, might make a neat background, for your planting mix. And I think probably that's where we'll use this one. Also, things like syngoniums always have a wonderful foliage patterns and colors. This is Pixie, I believe, which has that great silver and white. Kind of caladium looking, if you were thinking summer, but excellent, easy going house plant. Just about anything in the philodendron family would work as well. This one is called Little Phil, and it's a dwarf sort of nesting variety of philodendron. Great foliage filler, would look great in the container as well. The Tradescantias or Roeas, Moses in the Cradles. This is Sitara Gold with the green stripes and the red back and the purple back. Again, another good foliage plant. I mentioned the elkhorn fern. Also, ferns that have rhizomes. This is, I can't even remember the name of this guy at the moment, but it doesn't matter. Ferns that have rhizomes, like your rabbit foot ferns, kangaroo ferns, things like that, they're all pretty resilient to less than perfect conditions. Because they have these thick rhizomes, that just shows you that they're used to going through a dry period. You know, these will go through a dry period, they'll drop their fronds and then resprout again when they get moisture back. But it makes them an easier houseplant to deal with. And again, that would look probably really cool in there, so we may use him too. Begonias, any of the rhizomatous begonias, great foliage color. If you can grow the Rex as well, especially indoors, they're great. They don't mind being dry. You know, they'd make a good addition to a mixed planter like this as well. And any of the Peperomia family. This is Peperomia peppermill. There's a little Tuscany growing in the pot too, but Peperomia peppermill. And the Peperomia family has a lot of wonderful foliage, colors, and textures. So they work really well in mixed planters. They play nicely with other plants. They'll take a bit of dryness. They are sort of slightly succulent, so they'll take a bit of dryness between waterings and things, so they're really easy going. Just pretty much any of the Peperomia family. So, we've got all this we're going to deal with. Let's just see what we're going to use here now. So I said I thought we might use the elkhorn fern. So if we put the elkhorn fern in, we'll use it sort of one of our background plants. We'll assume that this is going to be looked at from this angle, so we don't need as much on the back. We'll maybe see how that looks in there. Love the Norfolk Island pines when they're little. Frosty fern we can drop in. Cyclamen we'll definitely put in there. Maybe not right on center. Let's use the winter green, although it doesn't really go with the color of that cyclamen. Maybe we won't use the winter green in this one. We can tuck in that fern maybe, although we're getting a little too ferny over here. So maybe we can drop in this guy. Oh, look at here. Yeah. Let's see what one of the Syngoniums looks like. Got a great foliage color. The silver and white might just pick up. The frosty fern, the flakes of white in the frosty fern. Well, that's not bad. As we get these, now once you play with them first, this is the way, definitely play with them first, because you're going to, you know, come up with a different combination or something that you like better. You don't want to just start planting and then, you know, have to keep replanting. We've got this other little fern, Selaginella here. You know, I might just tuck this in the back just as a bit of a filler back here, but we'll do that as we go along. So I think, what do we think, Laura? Does that look okay?
I think it looks good.
Laura, right there. Okay, so we're going to start planting these. But when I mentioned poinsettias earlier, if you want to throw a poinsettia into one of these arrangements, and they may or may not be ready yet for like a 4-inch poinsettia, then you do the old pot trick again. So let's just say we were going to put a poinsettia in where this Selaginella is. Okay, I'm going to move this stuff. The Elkhorn fern we can plant. Loosen the roots a little bit. Tuck him in there. Have some soil ready. There we go. Let's get the Norfolk pines in there. Move the soil back a bit. We're going to tuck them tight in against the fern. We're not going to leave a lot of space, you know, for them to sort of eventually grow in, because that's not what we're doing. We're putting together a centerpiece. We want the foliage to be full right away. So let's say we're going to put a poinsettia in here, but we don't have it yet. Then we do the trick that we did with the amaryllis. You take a pot. You take a pot, 4-inch pot, the size the poinsettia is going to come in, and plant the pot. This is how the growers do it. The growers will put these arrangements together. They'll put a pot in where the poinsettia is supposed to go when it's ready, because you can't grow a mixed planter with a poinsettia already in it from start to finish. Just won't work. So you leave a space, you leave a pot there, and then when the poinsettias are ready, you can lift that pot out, drop your poinsettia right in place, and you're done. We're doing that with the amaryllis too. But in this case, we're just going to keep going with the Selaginella, frosty fern. Lots of roots here. You can see them on little stilts. We're going to pack that in pretty tight against the Norfolk pines. Get a bit of soil freshening up in there. There we go. We'll put the Gaultheria in just because it's kind of different. Again, you can see what kind of a ground cover type plant this is. Look at the little runners. If you have acidic, sort of damp soil, you can grow Gaultheria in your garden. But for us, we're going to sort of mash it in against the Selaginella. Now, interestingly enough, as you'll see what's happening, we had the plants placed, they look pretty good, but already you can see as we're mashing them in together, we've got a gap here. So what we might do, we'll go back over to the Syngonium here, get rid of those couple of bad leaves, get them out of the way, they don't need to be there. Take them out of the pot. Loosen those roots a bit. We're going to tuck that in right up against the Elkhorn fern. We'll get a bit of soil in there, firm it down. And then we got a gap over here now, so we've put a couple of more plants in. So what I've got is I've got the other little fern. I think I'll tuck it in the front. And then over here, maybe we'll use our caterpillar fern, because that's going to fill in some of the base here at the back, just in case it does get viewed from the back a little bit. Just get a little bit of that. We're going to tuck that fern in there. Play with the fronds a little bit to get them all mingled together. Bring out a couple of Syngonium leaves. All looks a bit more natural. We'll get some soil in there so you can see we're potting all the way through here. But we've got our space for our amaryllis right there. I'm going to put the other little Selaginella, because it was a 2-inch pot, so there's lots of foliage. We're going to tuck it in beside the Gaultheria, just because we need a bit more there, a little bit more filler there. Get that filled in. Now the soil we're using is the same soil we use for everything. It's a soilless mix. Mostly peat moss. A few other things like gypsum and that, and then the other main ingredient is perlite for drainage. So we've got our cyclamen, and you can see cyclamen is a corm in there, and you can see it sprouting all the way off. So there's lots of new shoots coming. If you're buying cyclamen, look down in the foliage a little bit, and you'll see there's a whole crop of flowers down there just waiting to come. So as these ones fade, nip those off individually, and you'll get more flowers coming. They can last a really long time inside. So we'll just take a bit of that, just basic. They're just potted in just almost straight peat. It looks like maybe it's core, but we'll take some of that excess off. Push in our little hole there, and then firm in our cyclamen and give it a bit of soil. Now we get a bit of a gap at the back here, so I don't know what I'll throw in there. I might find another Selaginella or something to throw in the back there. But from the front, you can see we've already got a decent planter. So what we'll do now is we'll carefully water it all in. Put that in a bright sunny spot, but ideally a bit cool. You got a cool spot indoors. That's great, makes the cyclamens last longer. So we're not overly soaking, because remember that this water's not going to leave this pot except by evaporation or by the plant use. So there we go. We've got our basic mixed planter there ready to go. We've potted our amaryllis. So once this amaryllis now, we're going to grow this like this till it gets rooted and putting on some growth. And then what you do when you're ready, you just take it and just drop it in to the pots that you put in there, and your amaryllis is going to grow up here and make a beautiful arrangement. Now, if you don't want to use amaryllis and you want to make it more Christmassy, do the exact same thing we just did. Put a nice big 4-inch poinsettia in the middle. You can do anything like that. You can drop any sort of gift, sort of florist plant in that middle if you do it this way. And you can change that up. And then this is not going to get too much water from this mix while it's growing. Once it's got roots and it's up and flowering, you can water it regularly. You just don't want to overwater it at this time of the year. So put them together, grow them separately, and then when this has got growth going, you take it and you just drop it in the center, and you've got a beautiful amaryllis planter for table centers, side servers, coffee tables, whatever.
Hostess gifts.
Hostess gifts. It's all there. Really looks great. Super easy. I was just, as I was putting this one, sort of picking out plants, I thought, you could do this with succulents even too. No reason why we couldn't have done this with, echeverias and calicoes and crassulas and things like that, and got a whole different look with it. You certainly can do whatever is your fancy, whatever decor you have. You could use sansevierias in there, and then just drop the amaryllis in when it's time, or drop the poinsettia in when it's time. So
I think just remembering that it's not going to stay together long term.
these are not long term. 2-3 months, then you're probably going to take it apart and pot stuff on separately or whatever. So there we go. Doesn't hurt to fluff things around a little bit to get them to mingle together. They're not going to really do it much on their own, but if you just sort of do that a little bit yourself, tease them around a little bit, then they start to look like they've been growing together for a long time. You get a very natural look. And there we go.
So the one question you had is, where did you get that perfect pot?
That perfect pot, I have to say, that was from the Better Homes and Gardens collection that Walmart in the U.S. carries. I wish Walmart in Canada carried more of the Better Homes and Gardens pots because they make some really, really nice plastic pots that look like terracotta, that look like Vietnamese stoneware, ceramic pots. Every time we go to the States, we go to a Walmart and see what Better Homes and Gardens pots they have.
And they're very budget friendly.
And they're budget friendly. Honestly, this pot, I think was $9 US. Might have even been less. You know, we're not quite so lucky with our Walmarts here. They don't carry quite the range that Walmart US carries. So if you feel like you're going to go to the US anytime soon, maybe before January 5th, hit a Walmart, find some great Better Homes and Gardens pots. I don't even know if they're available online in Canada through Walmart. I don't think so, but you can always check. But it is the Better Homes and Gardens collection of planters. They do a really nice job. So we get what we can fit in the car whenever we go to the States. So there we go. All right. Any other questions for
That's
today?
the only question.
That's the only question for today. All right. Well, all the gift plants, all the Christmas plants are in your stores now, in your garden centers now. Great selections of amaryllis out there. So get busy. Get some of your plants together. You get your amaryllis potted. Might get them in bloom for Christmas. It's getting a little tight, but, you know, watch for ones that already have a bud started. They're your best option now. And we'll leave you with that. We also put these videos up now. So if you want to get them again, or if you want to tell a friend who doesn't use Facebook, follow us on YouTube. It's Mason House Gardens Let's Get Growing. Subscribe to our channel if we ever get enough. So subscribe even if you don't watch them on YouTube. Tell your friends. And watch for our 2025 trips. We've just released our Dorset, Devon, Cornwall trip. We'll be releasing our Lake District and Yorkshire Dales trip next week. If you're interested in joining us on a great garden tour of England, just give us a shout at Mason House Gardens. You can email me, Jeff at Mason House Gardens, Marjorie at Mason House Gardens, and we'll send you information on our trips. So we'll leave you with that. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the holiday season. We'll see you again next time on Let's Get Growing.